Morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining the Inca conference, The Road Ahead to 2025. I hope we're going to have an interesting day and that you'll find it a very productive way of spending your time. I'd like to say thank you very much, not just to the participants, but also to our sponsors who are dotted around the room. You can see various stands around the room when we're in the networking mode. Those are people who've sponsored us, and it's been great to have their support. Hellman Titan, CommScope, who you'll be hearing from shortly. We also have Calix, and in the room we've got Duraline, and we have Adtran as well, who you can see are all very helpfully sponsoring us. We're going to start the conference, first of all, with a video interview with Graeme Bolton from CommScope, as I mentioned before. And after this interview, into the first panel session. CommScope are one of our sponsors, so thank you very much to CommScope. I think the interview, I've seen the interview and I think it's actually really very helpful. It covers both topics to do with the general approach, the road ahead to 2025, but also a little bit more specifically what CommScope can do to help operators to build their networks more efficiently, more quickly, more effectively. We have about 100 and something people in the conference at the moment. I think it's 109. We have about 164, I think, registered for the conference as of this morning. The conference operates in this platform over 2 virtual floors, as it were. I'm glad you've had a chance to be able to network with other people. So let's move on to the video now, and we'll come back and speak in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that conference introduction. And now I'm going to be joined by Graeme Bolton of CommScope. Graeme, thanks for joining us this morning. The targets for expanding gigabit connectivity by 2025 seem a bit ambitious to me. Do CommScope think it's achievable?
Well, it is a tough challenge, but when you see that we, the UK, are ranked alongside some of our European neighbours, and by the way, we are the 5th largest economy in the UK. We're ranked around 35th out of 37 of the OECD countries. So when we take it in that context, there's a lot to do. But I think we have to say that in the last 5 to 10 years, the altnets within the UK have played a fantastic major role in really growing our gigabit network to the rate it is today. Still plenty of work to be done. But within that, we all know there's multiple challenges that this sector is facing. Some of them are national, some of them are regional, some of them are technology focused, and then we have operational challenges. One of those challenges that's been more recently discussed at a national level is the skill shortage across the board. And there are architects, planners, designers, engineers, contractors that are now needed, and the demand appears to be growing every day. To a large extent, this is because of the large amount of investment that's coming into this sector. The altnet sector in the last 12 months alone, if we look at one of the Point Topic recent reports, it's had £1.7 billion invested into it, which is fantastic. But with this investment and this drive to build the network does come these challenges. So how can CommScope help with overcoming some of these challenges? Well, there's a few areas where CommScope can help, and we'll talk about these a little bit. But first of all, with the CommScope fibre planning tools, with our fibre design services, and with our extensive product portfolio, we can really bring some of these things to play and help remove some of those challenges that are faced today. And just to touch on the planning tool, CommScope have developed a fibre e-planner tool that is intended to guide our network planners and engineers through the design, through the selection and identification of the necessary components that are going to be used in a fibre optic network. And those components are, best suited for their specific application needs. So this is a great interactive tool, easy navigation through the different network architectures, topologies, based on many years of working within the UK market. And I would urge, planners and designers that are watching this at the moment to take an opportunity to download this ePlanner tool from our website and contact myself or Jeff Buddington via LinkedIn, and we can make that available.
Yes, I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask you, which you may have partly answered, is how you can help improve, timely deployment.
Yeah, we touched on the ePlanner and, a little bit more detail about the value that the ePlanner can actually bring. The main thing about this ePlanner is that it covers different network topologies. And as I mentioned before, based on many years of experience, some good logic, it recommends the right components to use in your network. So what we're looking to do here is we're looking to take away or reduce the opportunity for using and ordering the wrong component and only realizing at the last moment. Now, the ePlanner uses network topology decision trees for the central office, the feeder, distribution, SFUs and NDUs to find the right topology for whatever the AltNet application is going to be. And you follow that logic through the guide, through the various topologies, and what that ePlanner shows the user is the pros and cons of each decision that's being taken. And it will also, at the end of that, produce the most common CommScope products used for each of these solutions. So it quickly allows you to assess the topology configuration of choice and the most common products that you're going to need for that. Now, the point being is that having access to this ePlanner can really facilitate and speed up your network planning process. And this is one way in which CommScope can really help, the AltNet community. We're more than happy to schedule time with any of the AltNets listening into this. And any questions you might have and provide any of that additional assistance if you feel you need it.
For you, what are the main design challenges and how do you help these operators overcome them?
Well, the commitment that's being made, by everyone towards gigabit capable broadband from, the mainstream incumbent operators and, all of the AltNets that created challenges in the workforce as the deployments are being ramped up across the UK to try and hit the government targets. CommScope has a long established global professional services business. And within that business, we have a design team with design experience across fibre, HFC and Wi-Fi networks. And it's through this fibre design team that we can help customers really quickly overcome some of the skilled workforce shortages with our design and survey services. So there's three things to think about here. The first one, if you're using design services from CommScope, what this means for an operator is, that valuable capital isn't being invested in headcount, or it doesn't need to be. They can use a service from CommScope to outsource that design, and we're able to then actually do the design on their behalf. Or, if they have an existing design team that's busy working on one part of a project and they quickly need to cover another area, we can also take on board that part of the project, maybe put some heads into their business. But whatever the case, we've got the skills and capability and that experience to be able to complement existing design teams. I think the other point to mention here is that, I mentioned our team is global. So we have provided these services to many different operators, around the globe. And through doing that, we've generated a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, and we share that knowledge and experience through our organisation. Now, the point being there is we not only do we come across different approaches in there, but we come across many different design tools. So our teams are very experienced on using different design tools, I should say, and we share this knowledge and skill around our team. And I think, you know, the final kind of point around how CommScope design can help is that, you know, we have this best of all worlds approach where, you know, as I mentioned, you can either outsource it to us, or we can put some headcount in, or you can use our design tool. You know, you can pick and mix how you want to use our tools and services. And having this best of all worlds approach, we think can help our customers become much more efficient and help them deploy their networks faster and cheaper.
Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
Hi again. So I'd like now to invite John Irvine onto the stage. John is the Chief Executive of WightFibre, building fibre out across the island. John is chairing the first of our main panel sessions. Morning, John.
Good morning. Thank you, Malcolm. My pleasure to host the first session with a little bit of trepidation as we all get used to the technology. As Malcolm said, I'm CEO of WightFibre, which is a small operator serving the Isle of Wight off the south coast of the UK. Used to bill us as the last independent cable company that hadn't been subsumed into Virgin Media, and now I bill us as the first company to get funding from the government's Digital Infrastructure Investment Fund. So we're fully funded to the tune of around 90 million to roll out to just over 70,000 homes here on the Isle of Wight. Most of that will be done by the end of 2022. We're about 22,000 homes through. So I'd like to invite our panelists onto the stage. So we have Conal Henry from Fibrus, Graeme Oxby from Community Fibre, Jeremy Sheehan from Obelisk, and hopefully Malcolm Maltby from Michael Maltby from Jurassic, who wasn't around earlier. Hopefully, maybe not yet. Oh yeah, there you are, Michael. Thank you. And we have Graeme here as well, I think, from CommScope. So, I mean, the format of this session is really around the government's target of 100% gigabit connectivity or gigabit capable connectivity by the end of.
Can we just ask Graeme to come onto the stage as well? Bolton.
So we've got this target of 100% connectivity by the end of 2025. A lot of that is being fulfilled by the altnet sector. Since the start of 2019, £1.76 billion of investment in altnets has been announced, bringing the total to over 7 billion by 2025-26. So that's a lot of money to spend and a lot of a rollout to be covered. And in addition to that, the government has announced their £5 billion fund to reach some of the more challenging areas. So in this session, we're going to talk about some of the opportunities that presents and the challenges that presents. But we thought we'd start by just asking each of the panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their businesses. So we'll just go in alphabetical order. Conal, do you want to go first?
Morning, everybody. Thanks, John, for that intro. Yeah, I'm Conal Henry. I'm the chair of a company called Fibrus. I am also the chair of the advisory board for the Amber iteration of the National Digital Infrastructure Fund. At Fibrus, we are building full fibre networks across Northern Ireland, focusing on the sort of regional and underserved areas. We were founded just under 2 years ago. We have taken investment from Infra Capital, and we're looking to get to sort of over 10 towards 20,000 homes before the end of this calendar year. So it's a full fibre focus, and we're growing well, but it's I'm sure we're experiencing all the challenges that everybody else at the conference is experiencing. You're on mute, John.
Graeme.
How's are you, Graeme?
Hi, Graeme, Oxby, CEO
of 2020, isn't it?
I know, exactly. CEO of Community Fibre. We are building full fibre network in London, well over 100,000 homes connected. We've got a network now in at least 16 London boroughs, and agreements with quite a lot of additional landlords to roll out into additional boroughs in the next year. We're well backed with £400 million from Warburg Pincus and Deutsche Telekom Capital Partners, really with the aim of rolling out the network much more extensively in London. We're primarily focused on social housing, large MDUs, so it's quite nice to be able to be giving great broadband connectivity to people who typically might be last in the line, certainly in this country's history, so it's a nice thing to be able to do, and that's really the focus of our business.
Thank you, Graeme. And Jeremy?
Good morning, everybody. So Jeremy Sheehan, UK Managing Director of Obelisk. Currently designing, surveying, building networks across the UK for the altnets. We operate both in the fibre to the premise market and also in the power network business. We are currently expanding quite considerably, and no doubt be talking about that as we go through this session. Thank you.
And last but not least, Michael from Jurassic Fibre. Still on mute, Michael? Maybe we'll let you work with technology for a moment or two. We have
Sorry, John. Michael, if you're stuck on mute right now, if you could just try a refresh of the page, that should be able to sort you out.
Give Michael 10 seconds, otherwise we'll press on. All right, let's press on. We have Graeme Bolton with us from CommScope as well during this session, so thank you again for your sponsorship, Graeme. We have a number of different challenges around our rollouts over the next 5 years, 10 years perhaps, but 5 years if the government has their way. And certainly top of my list here on WightFibre is the increasing challenges of getting contractors. And I would also put the word quality contractors in front of that to actually come and do the build for us. So we're, as more and more altnets are getting their funding and the pace of rollout is increasing, there are fewer contractors to go around. And rate sheets are going up. So that's a challenge for us at WightFibre. I know it's a challenge amongst others. I'm just interested in some of the panelists' views on their approaches to that and what we do about it. So, Graeme, you're, I guess, in MDUs and mostly in London, so it might be a little bit easier for you. Are you hitting any of those sorts of issues?
Yeah, good point. I mean, there is growing pressure, I think it's fair to say, but thus far we've not had any real issues in terms of being unable to build. I think we see a landscape where kind of regional contractors will continue to do well, and those that are sort of focused on your local area, as long as you build a strong relationship with them, actually can keep you happy as a builder. I think where we see more pressure, certainly as the scale of builds increases, is more on the national the builders, who really are looking at 3 or 4 different bids simultaneously, and we'll have to make some choices about which one they take and how they allocate their resources. I mean, I think fundamentally it does make the case for a very strong training, development and indeed apprenticeship focus for the whole industry. There's clearly a lot of jobs to be had in this sector over the next 5 to 10 years. That's got to be good, given all of the economy or sectors of the economy that are now sort of dying off. Clearly, we need to find collectively, I think, a way of bringing people into this sector and give them valuable and productive employment. Which I think we can do.
Conal, are you seeing the same thing in Northern Ireland? You're a bit earlier stage.
Yeah. Well, I suppose one of the things I used to say to our investors when we were raising the capital, when this issue was discussed, was we probably have a slight advantage in that if you're in the UK and GB, as they call it in Northern Ireland, and you open any given hole, there's an Irish fella in it. So the contractor community is quite Irish in nature, and that so the pitch to so the actual supply in Northern Ireland versus the rest of the UK and Republic of Ireland is about the same, but there's a sort of pressure valve there where we can bring resources back from across the water. That being the case, more than what Graeme said, there's simply not enough people to do the work that exists, and we're not going to procure our way out of that problem. We have to train and develop our way out of that problem, and it'll be interesting to see whether that's a coordinated effort or whether people go off and do their own thing. I think it's going to be hard to coordinate. It is a point of competition amongst operators, so it's not necessarily in every operator's interest to help every other operator get those resources. But it probably is the right way to do it is probably to coordinate resources.
Just interesting that we here in the Isle of Wight, we've actually got some Irish contractors here. So I think the flow of resources is 2 ways across the Irish Sea.
Yeah.
At the moment, but interesting times for sure. Jeremy, you got any perspective on this?
Well, certainly I certainly find myself at the forefront of trying to deliver for the AltNet. So I think it's true to say that there's definitely a shift now between what the technology is moving towards a more of a joint PIA solution. So the type of skills you're necessary actually on the ground are beginning to change, and I think that in its own self is causing and will cause some difficulties around resource and training. But I think actually if we have any hope of getting near the target, it's to try and drive some optimization in the technology that people use. So your optimization of the teams actually on the ground and that utilization of that resource has to be maximized. And we're probably not at that point yet. What you've got to do as a contractor, and I think what we found certainly, and we mobilized through the beginning of COVID, which wasn't a great choice, but we mobilized, and we're probably, for 2021, we'll probably have to expand by a factor of 4 in our business to maintain our current client base. And I think the key thing here is with contractors, I think they need to work with AltNets and they need to make a choice, because what you can't do, you can't flip between AltNets. You have to make a decision. You have to decide who you want to work with and the gravitas of those management teams, and then you have to stick with it and you have to make it work. And both parties need to make it work, because that's the only time you get the true utilization out of the resources, the current resources we've got.
And Graeme, I guess not perhaps your forte, this particular one, but Jeremy touched on systems and efficient systems there around helping. Is that something CommScope can help with?
Well, certainly. As I mentioned in the video, we put these tools together to try and do precisely that, to try and make your lives as easy as possible on there. And, when we put those together with the, design services that we have, and obviously, other Jeremy has within his teams, you know, the purpose there is to try and obviously help you guys get your networks rolled out as quickly as possible. But one point I'd just like to kind of touch on is that, John, you mentioned your challenge is getting quality contractors in there. I think the problem we've got at the moment, and I think you're all saying, is that this business is ramping up. It's not ramping down. So you're going to need more. And at some point, you have to bring new people into this business. So I think that's one of the challenges that the industry has got, is how you actually integrate some of those new people into there and provide some of those skills whilst not losing that quality. Certainly from CommScope's perspective, we would love to be engaged with, you know, government, companies like yourselves, to look at how we could bring people into that business and skill them up. And I think that's a question that, you know, hasn't been answered really very well at the moment, is how companies like CommScope and yourselves can collaborate to actually make things like that happen.
Indeed. Good to hear. We have a few questions coming in on the Q&A, and so just I forgot to mention earlier, if anyone does have questions, do put them in the little Q&A panel on the side of your window, and we'll circle around to them. And a couple of questions that have come through first, I think we touched on already, is, you know, how are we actually going to deliver to the scale that is required by the 2025 ambition? And I think I heard, I think Conal, certainly someone said, and Graeme, no real challenges right now in meeting our timelines. And here at WightFibre, that's true as well. We're maybe 6-9 months behind our original 2017 plan, which is by no means disastrous. So I think we're not hitting blockers yet in terms of being able to scale, but it's certainly a challenge that's coming down the line. And the related question to that was something dear to my heart, if around local councils and landlords supporting the fibre rollout. I think I said publicly at the last Giga conference, and I'll say it again now, the WightFibre's rollout on the Isle of Wight is happening despite the Isle of Wight Council and not because of them. I mean, we're fortunate we have one highways agency to deal with. I'm just interested in other perspectives on that. Conal, I know you've got one single highways agency for Northern Ireland. Is that helpful or not?
Yeah, it's extremely helpful. I think, you know, I wouldn't take the view that you would take with your local authority. I think, you know,
not publicly anyway.
Well, no, not even privately. I genuinely, I think the broadband situation, particularly in regional and underserved parts of Northern Ireland, is so bad. Like, so 2 of the bottom 10 council areas are in Northern Ireland, even though Northern Ireland is 1% of the UK population. So the need is great and it's understood. So a lot of the economic development guys in the local authorities, there is one road opening authority for the whole of Northern Ireland. So it's definitely, I have a very, very long list of problems, John, to be clear, but I don't think that's one of them. You know, clearly you've got to do your homework, you got to do your admin, all that there sort of stuff, but certainly with road openings and local authorities, it's fine. You do have a bit of wayleave and a bit of landlord problems here and there, but again, we're in smaller towns. You know, they tend to come with rented and then community fibre type properties, which are less prevalent in the towns we're in. So that issue, I don't think the conference can look to me for a whole lot of guidance on it, because we're not really going through it to the same extent that a lot of others are.
And Graeme, you've got a lot of London boroughs to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, if, to my mind, having the 2025 ambition is obviously, you know, it's great to have a big hairy goal to aim at. I think there's a ton of friction in the system that's going to make the delivery of that relatively patchy. You're also going to do a good job, John, and, you know, pretty much get there. You know, I can easily imagine there will be boroughs in London that do not get there, and yet there are other boroughs who are, with more enlightened leadership, you know, really pushing the pace. You know, places like Southwark and Wandsworth and Westminster are really driving hard for broadband provision. There are others not even talking about it, which is bizarre. Yeah. And the fact that it can easily take 2 to 3 years to get a wayleave from some of these people. which at the end of the day is only a bit of paper, no money exchanges hands for it, and then you're into a very risk-averse processes to get to build. I think there's a ton of friction that will mean that the delivery of 2025 is pretty patchy overall, certainly in London, I suspect sort of nationwide. Some areas will get very close, others will still, I think, be quite a long way off.
Yeah, another little Isle of Wight connection there. The CEO of Westminster City Council used to be
well,
of Isle of Wight Council.
Okay.
If you got that 5 years. Small world. Any perspectives from Jeremy on that?
I've got a comment. I mean, I remember at the last Inc conference, I stood up and asked how many people in the conference were actually from the local authorities, and I was challenged by a few actually, but not as many as I'd hoped. And I think if you look at what the overall challenge is from the government for connectivity across the whole of the country, across the UK, is that actually it is a absolute combined responsibility. The altnets actually I think have stood up remarkably to build business plans to gain investment. And that has been a monstrous change over the last 4 or 5 years, and it's qualified every quarter, even this year, with new announcements. So the gravitas of the altnets itself, both in the management teams and the finances, I think has met its challenge. I think that's quite a big achievement. It's a remarkable achievement, actually. What's interesting though is that to enable us to deliver this for the UK, it requires everybody, not just the altnets, to stand up and take that responsibility. And I would level that, of course, across all government, local authorities, and then I would also level that at the incumbent. And I would say that as a whole, for this country, especially given what we are challenged with today with COVID and working from home, we have to stand up as a community across the UK and face this challenge. And everybody's responsible for it, not just the altnets, the management teams, the chairmen and the CEOs, but everybody as a collective. And it will be interesting to see how many of those, all of those people are actually in this audience today and recognise the importance of it, because I do think some are missing.
We did a survey recently with Inside Housing, looking at just asking questions around broadband provision amongst local authorities and big social housing providers. And there was only a quarter, just under a quarter, saying they were actually going to enable broadband in their properties in the next 2 years. I mean, just a really low number because it's just not the top of the priority list. And of course, there's many pressure on local authorities. Of which probably broadband is one, and sometimes it doesn't reach the top 5, but it is a fundamental blocker to progress. There's enough capital, I'm sure we can find or train enough resources. There's certainly enough will to build these networks out there, but it does need everyone to be, I think, more aligned in a more uniform way across the country, I think, to get this done.
All right, sorry, I'm going to sort of, as many of you might know, I spent the previous 12 years of my career working at the intersection of the public sector and the private sector in the Republic of Ireland. And okay, granted, it's the Republic of Ireland, but the one thing I would have always understood, the way I would have put it is, the public sector and the private sector effectively speak two completely different languages. Okay, so you're sitting there in this room and we're all speaking French, okay, and the public sector in a room down the road and they're all speaking German. And until you actually accept that those are completely different languages, they're completely different priorities, they have a completely different frame of reference, different funding envelopes, different success factors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to be sitting and looking at these people going, why don't they just see what I see? And the answer is because that's not what they're looking to see.
Yeah.
And in the same way, Jeremy asked how many public sector representatives, how many local authority representatives were at the INCA conference. Well, how many INCA members were at the public sector, infrastructure conference? So it's not a fault on either side. It's a disconnect, and there's a lot of work, a lot of proactive work has to go into the disconnect. If you just sit there and stamp your feet and go, why can't these German speakers speak French?
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to happen.
I agree with you, Conal. I'm not suggesting that. I just think actually it does need to be said across all. You know, we're all in the same boat, and actually to build this thing, especially with what we're all facing with at the moment, is even more important. And I do think the altnets have stood up, and I think they've done well. I think there's a huge amount more to do. I think we'll talk about resources later today. I think technology is not particularly a difficult technology. Let's face it. You know, we just got to be able to put the meters on the ground or on the pole. And I think we're getting there. I think the altnets themselves, I think people want to join the sector. You know, we're interviewing, and like many people are, building teams. And it's surprising now how many more people are wanting to come into this sector than, say, before. I think it has gravitas, it has longevity.
Who wouldn't want to work in telecom?
Sorry?
Who wouldn't want to work in telecoms?
There you go.
Certainly right now in the depths of COVID, it's not a bad place to be, I suppose, for most of us. I think I might have set the cat amongst the pigeons a little with the comments about local authority support. So lots of questions around, are we working with MPs to encourage local authorities to be more helpful? I perhaps should qualify some of my comments earlier. There's absolutely no question that an executive officer level and a political level in my council that there's a huge desire for what we're calling the Gigabit Island project. It's just falling at that sort of middle management level and below, and we have the quite unusual situation where we have a PFI company running Island Roads, delegated authority from the council. So they're a commercial profit-making organisation that have resurfaced huge swathes of the Island Roads, lots of Section 58 notices. So it is a little bit exception. Very, very nice roads, by the way, if ever you come and visit. But makes it a very difficult environment when you want to dig them up. Maybe moving on a little and talk about competitive pressures on us. So overbuild by Openreach, particularly in city centre areas, is a huge challenge for some of us, and even for those of us in more rural areas. You know, I'm in the Isle of Wight. It's semi-rural. There are urban bits, but even Openreach have decided, that they put at least one of the exchanges so far onto their rural expansion list, and almost certainly in my case, because I'm here and I'm already doing a full fibre and I'm taking market share from them. Any concerns around the table on competing with Openreach?
Not from my perspective. I mean, our working assumption is Openreach will be everywhere in due course. Yeah. So just a matter of time, and enjoy it when they're not there, but expect them to be there soon, I think.
Yeah, if you've got a business model that depends on not being overbuilt by Openreach, you probably want to rethink your business model.
All right, that was pretty easy then. I think we're all pretty aligned on that one. We're quite happy to compete with Openreach and have no concerns about being able to do so. I know there's a session that's going to touch on this later, but wholesale is an interesting discussion in that context, because obviously at the moment Openreach are the de facto wholesale platform for the UK, and the really big ISPs all use Openreach predominantly. Now, do you see wholesale as an opportunity or a threat?
From my perspective, it's an opportunity. Obviously, as a business, you've got to decide whether you want to do wholesale or not, and that might depend on competitive environments, your business model, etc. But certainly, the big ISPs do want an alternative to Openreach. But it's not an easy route to take. You know, they are big companies, And as a result of that, they need scale in your build. They're not going to be interested in a few thousand here and there. And ideally, they want a sort of reasonably harmonized approach to how they integrate with you at the IT and the network level, because they don't want to have too many bespoke changes. So it's certainly, it's in the non-trivial category, I think, in terms of working with them. But there is definitely appetite out there, but it's really for denser networks that allow them to apply their sales and marketing machinery to those networks, those areas, to actually get decent levels of penetration. But I think if you're interested in wholesale, there's definitely an opportunity out there.
Yeah, I mean, I used to run an entirely wholesale business, and we've opened with an entirely retail business in Fibrus, but I think that our wholesale strategy, we have to recognize where we sit in the food chain, will be driven by the wholesale strategy of the big players, Sky, Virgin, and TalkTalk. And that's still not clear. I think Graeme's right. Those guys need to be able to deal with significant counterparties. They don't want to have to deal with 100 others. So I think how wholesale looks in terms of the altnet sector is probably still not going to be clear for another couple of years until there's some sort of consolidation, either actual fiscal consolidation or operational consolidation within the market. But it's definitely an opportunity, and one that we'll all have to pursue. I have a strange feeling that the big winners in that will be the wholesale buyers, because they'll finally have a proper competitive network market to buy from, which will suit them down to the ground if they play it right.
Yeah, and I will point everyone to, there's a session this afternoon around acquiring customers and the challenge of educating the market and the end customer, and part of that discussion will be about Inca's initiatives on a wholesale aggregation platform. So definitely one to join in on later. Any comments on that particular one from Jeremy or Graeme?
The only question I have is actually, I think if you go back a couple of years and you try to, before the altnets really got going, you try to build a network. Of course, wholesale and working with BT, Openreach and so forth, or BT, and the altnets was the key thing to be a wholesaler. And of course, the size of that network had to be of a certain critical point. Do you think that's reduced now? I mean, that's one question I have. Do you think it's still got to be, the argument was it had to be a national network to be able for them to come on board?
I don't think there's any point in engaging with the significant wholesale providers until you've multiple hundreds of thousands of networks, right. Of homes passed. That's not a scientific view. That's just a sort of gut feeling at the moment. We're too busy building a network to be able to develop a wholesale business, but it's something we have to do as we go down the line.
Yeah, I tend to agree, Conal. I think it is. Yeah, they do want to scale. They're big businesses. They can't deal with 20,000 here, 10,000 there. It's not interesting to them. It doesn't make enough of a difference to them. So I think it is fairly extensive, fairly dense networks, contiguous networks, is really what they're looking for, to really come in and have a true alternative to Openreach. Because for all its faults, Openreach, when it comes to wholesale, is they know how to do business with it. It's not necessarily easy, but they know how to do business with it, and they know how to add areas, and simplicity is quite important for them.
And they know how to maximise their revenue as well, Graeme. That's not an accusation of any malfeasance on their part. They know how to get the most amount of revenue within that regulated environment. It's very shrewd. It may be impenetrable and difficult to understand, but it's a very shrewd operating model.
Yeah, absolutely, agree.
I think, as you guys say, wholesale is going to be a great opportunity for you. But I'm interested in your thoughts about, can you compete just on speed? Or do you think in the future you're going to have to offer some competing product bundles in the same way as BT and Virgin to really get that customer base, make it a little bit more sticky for you?
My view would be at the retail level, yes, certainly adding products within reason is viable and probably essential. I know that we do lose some customers because we don't have one or two of the products available. So it would help our acquisition if we had a slightly broader product range, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But you've got to avoid all the complexities of set-top boxes and those sorts of things, which frankly, most of the big operators wish they didn't have in their portfolios, because it costs them a fortune to keep those things going. So I think it's about making selective choices, certainly from our perspective, about which products you add.
Yeah, I'd actually defer to Graeme there. I don't know. We're still learning the market. I think basically, Graeme, it's a spreadsheet. Clearly there are customers there that you can't acquire if you don't provide a television product. Yeah. How many they are and how much you'd make from them, you then have to offset against the cost of the complexity that Graeme just outlined. I don't understand that spreadsheet yet. I think, we will need to get our heads around it, but it's a spreadsheet. It's not some big sort of religious issue. It's, do you really think that you can acquire more customers by incorporating that level of complexity? Yeah. My sort of hope is that cord cutting comes down the line and actually set-top boxes become a disadvantage over time. It's a hope rather than an absolute clear. I think someone like Sky is just so good at what they do that they will probably find a way to retain their advantage.
Yeah,
I'll echo all of that. We were a cable company. We had a TV platform. We keep trying to emulate that. Being able to provide a phone line is still important for many customers, even though they don't use them very much. We're just coming to the end of our time. A couple of minutes left, and I just thought we've focused on the challenges in getting to 2025. And the title of the session was actually opportunities and challenges. So I thought I just might invite us to talk about the opportunities that we see ahead, and to frame this on a positive note as we finish the session. Conal, you want to?
Listen, it's a once in a generation opportunity. There's full network swap out. The technology within telecommunications is going to change for the first time since the Second World War, arguably, in real terms, and and that the technology delivered to every home will be changed.
Same.
Yeah, look, we've got fresh new networks, which the legacy networks would die for, and we've got fantastic sales opportunities, in part because of the dramas we've been going through this year. I think the sales environment has never been so good for great fast broadband. So big opportunity.
Jeremy,
giving people the opportunity to move to the sector. It's fantastic. I'm delighted to who we're hiring.
And Graeme, final word from our sponsor.
Thank you. I think it's a fantastic opportunity with what's going on at the moment for across a number of areas. For people getting into this business, great opportunity. Everything's ramping up, but as we have this gigabit network, what can we do with this gigabit network here? We've got the opportunity for everyone now who's going to have a gig to the home potentially. I think it creates lots of opportunities for new business and new uses of that speed.
Yeah, I'm just waiting on the killer app that means you can't live without it, and your broadband doesn't work unless it.
Know when you found it.
Called children.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Our time.
Thank you, John.
And I see Malcolm has appeared back on screen.
Thanks very much, John. Thanks for chairing that session. Great session. Really good start to the conference. So thanks to all the panelists as well. Lots of questions coming up in the Q&A. Some really good questions I can see as well. Many of them are going to be addressed in other sessions during the course of the morning. So I think we've set the scene pretty well here for the rest of the discussion today. We'll now move into a couple of minutes of networking again before we go on to the next video, which is from a video interview with Matt Hunter from Hellman Titan. Matt, I think, is well known to a lot of us. He's an Inca board member, knows the sector extremely well, and I think it's going to have quite a few interesting things for us to hear about. So thanks again to the panel. Move back into the networking session.
Okay.